The African village where Elara lived was a place of warmth and serenity, cradled by the rolling hills and the deep, endless skies that painted the land in a spectrum of colors from dawn till dusk. In this place, Elara was a beacon of light. Her beauty was more than physical. It radiated from her heart, reflected in her laughter, in the joy she spread, in the way she cared for everyone around her. She was known for her kindness, her vibrant energy, and the way she seemed to brighten even the darkest corners of the world. The villagers adored her, especially the children, who followed her around like a swarm of eager bees, soaking up her every word, every story. Elara's life was simple but full of purpose. She had everything she could ever need, a home, a community, and a world she loved. But as beautiful as her life seemed, a dark legend cast a shadow over it. It was a legend older than the village itself, whispered only in the quietest corners, in the hush of the night, and carried from one generation to the next. The legend spoke of Morwen, the Shadow Witch, a creature bound by a curse that made her hunger insatiable. She was said to feed on the souls of the innocent, drawn to the purest of hearts like a moth to a flame. No one knew where Morwen had come from, or how she had gained such dark power, but it was said that when the Moonpetal, a rare and mystical flower that bloomed once every year to mark the coming of the rains, withered and died, it was a sign that Morwen had chosen a new victim. That victim would be forced to partake in a feast, but it wasn't a feast of food or drink. It was a feast that consumed the very essence of the soul, leaving only an empty shell behind. For years the village had lived under the shadow of this ancient curse, knowing that Morwen was out there somewhere, watching, waiting, always on the prowl. The villagers lived in quiet fear, careful to avoid the witch's notice, never daring to speak too loudly or act too boldly. And yet, as time passed, the curse seemed like a distant myth, something that happened long ago, not something to worry about in their everyday lives. But the old legends never truly died, and so it happened. One day in Elara's garden, the very flower that had symbolized peace and abundance began to die. The Moonpetal, its once beautiful petals began to wither and curl, its color fading from vibrant purple to a sickly yellow, a clear sign that Morwen's gaze had fallen upon Elara. The village had always known that when the Moonpetal died, it was a sign of doom, a signal that the witch's curse had begun. Elara stood frozen in her garden, staring at the wilting flower. Her heart raced as the chilling realization sank in. Morwen was coming for her. The once peaceful village was now filled with an air of dread, and Elara could feel the weight of the curse descending upon her like a dark cloud. The villagers began to avoid her, retreating into their homes, whispers of fear echoing in the wind. Elara had always known the stories, had always feared the curse, but never had she believed it would come for her. She was just a simple girl after all. But now, standing before the dying Moonpetal, Elara knew that no one was immune. The curse didn't care about who you were or what you had. It only cared about your soul, and once Morwen had chosen you, there was no escaping her grasp. Panic seized her chest, but she quickly pushed it down. She had to think. She couldn't let fear rule her. Elara had always been resourceful, always able to find a way out of difficult situations. But this was something different. There was no escaping a curse this powerful. The witch Morwen was not a mere mortal. She was a force of nature, an ancient evil that had been feeding on the souls of the innocent for centuries. She had magic that could twist reality, that could make you see things that weren't there, that could tear your very soul apart. Elara's mind raced as she tried to make sense of it all. She knew that her life as she knew it was over. The curse would take everything from her, the joy, the laughter, the love, until she was nothing more than a hollow shell, trapped in the witch's feast forever. The thought made her shudder, her knees buckling under the weight of the realization. She had lived a life filled with so much promise, so much beauty, and now it was all slipping through her fingers like sand. But then something inside her stirred. A defiant spark ignited in her chest. Elara refused to be another victim. She refused to let her life be consumed by the dark forces that had claimed so many before her. There had to be a way out. There had to be a way to break the curse. The legends, after all, were just stories. They couldn't be entirely true, could they? There had to be a loophole, a way to fight back. She couldn't let Morwen win. She couldn't let the darkness claim her soul. Elara looked up at the sky, a sense of resolve sweeping over her. The battle had just begun, and she would fight with everything she had. She would not let the witch take her without a fight. But as she made this vow to herself, the village around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the storm that was sure to come. It was only a matter of time before Morwen's curse would reach its full strength, and Elara would have to face the witch head-on. Days passed in a blur of tension and dread, and Elara felt the curse's grip tightening around her with each passing moment. The once vibrant world around her now seemed shadowed, as though Morwen's curse had already begun to drain the very color from her life. The villagers, fearful of what the witch's curse could mean for them, grew more distant, offering only wary glances when they crossed paths with her. But Elara, though terrified, refused to show fear. She refused to believe she was doomed. Determined to find a way to break the curse, Elara retreated into her grandmother's ancient chest, a relic of the past, in search of anything that could help her. She had grown up listening to stories of ancient magic and rituals, passed down from generation to generation, but until now she had never truly believed in them. Yet in her desperation, she knew she had no choice but to trust in these forgotten rites. She pulled out tattered scrolls, old and fragile, reading through the texts with trembling hands, her eyes scanning the faded ink for something, anything that might offer a solution. It was then, buried deep within the pages of a nearly lost manuscript, that she found it. A ritual, an old forgotten way to resist the curse, but one that demanded an unimaginable sacrifice. The ritual was simple in its instruction, yet harrowing in its execution. Morwen's magic was a curse of consumption, a dark feast that would consume not only the body but the soul. To resist it, Elara would need to reject the feast entirely, to deprive herself of any sustenance, even the most basic of nourishment. She was to consume only ashes, nothing more. Not food, not water, not the simplest of fruits, but ashes, the remnants of something that had been reduced to nothing. The ashes would represent her rejection of the witch's spell, her defiance, and her refusal to partake in the curse's deadly feast. At first the thought seemed impossible, almost absurd. To eat ashes, to choose such a path of self-deprivation, was not something any sane person would willingly choose. But Elara understood that this was her only hope, her only chance to survive. She couldn't let herself fall into Morwen's grasp, to become another hollow soul in the witch's endless banquet. Elara's heart ached as she prepared for the ritual. She set a fire in the small pit outside her home, watching as the flames flickered and danced, consuming the things she held dear, old clothes, precious mementos of her family, even the dried herbs she had grown herself. Each piece that burned represented something she would have to give up, something she could never reclaim. The smoke stung her eyes, but she did not turn away. She couldn't. The ashes were now the key to her freedom. She took the bowl, her hands shaking, and began to collect the remnants of the fire. The ash was heavy, black and bitter, an acrid smell that made her stomach churn. She hesitated for only a moment, staring into the bowl, the last barrier between her and Morwen's power. With a deep breath, Elara scooped up the first handful of ashes and brought it to her lips. The sensation was unbearable. The taste of it, the dry, sharp, unyielding bitterness, was like nothing she had ever known. It scraped against the roof of her mouth, seared her throat, and made her insides twist in pain. But she swallowed it. She had no choice. Each bite felt like a piece of her soul was being consumed, but she pushed on, driven by the single thought that it was the only way to break free. As she ate, she could feel the weight of Morwen's curse pressing on her like 1,000 chains, but she kept going. She knew that each spoonful was weakening the witch's hold over her. The ashes were working, but at what cost? Her body began to feel weak, her energy draining away, her skin growing pale and drawn. The hunger inside her grew unbearable, the longing for sustenance more intense than she had ever felt. But she couldn't stop, not now. Not when she was so close. Her mind began to spin, her vision blurred, and the world around her seemed to tilt. She was slipping away, but she refused to give in to the darkness that threatened to consume her. With each bite, she fought back against Morwen's power. Elara knew that she was risking everything, her health, her life, her very soul, but it was the only choice left. She couldn't let the witch win. She would endure. For freedom, for her future, for the life she had once known. But as the ritual continued, Elara could feel herself fading, slipping into a haze where she was no longer sure if she was awake or asleep, if she was alive or already lost. The ashes were burning her from the inside, and she wasn't sure how much longer she could endure. Yet she pressed on, determined to hold on to the last bit of hope. Morwen's curse was strong, but Elara's will was stronger. The witch may have been all-powerful, but she couldn't break Elara's spirit. As the last of the ashes were consumed, Elara collapsed, exhausted and broken. But she knew deep in her heart that the battle was far from over. She had taken the first step toward freedom. The ashes had done their work, but now it was time to wait, to hope that she had done enough to sever the curse once and for all. The rest was out of her hands. Days passed in a blur, and Elara's body seemed to wither away before her very eyes. The village, once full of life and joy, now stood at a distance, silent as if holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable end. Elara's physical appearance had changed beyond recognition. Her once vibrant skin had become thin and translucent, her eyes hollow with exhaustion. Her body felt like a foreign thing, light and frail, as if it could crumble to dust at any moment. Yet even in the depths of her suffering, there was something else. A flicker of light deep within her chest, a strange energy that refused to die, refused to surrender. It was the energy of defiance, of willpower that could not be crushed by the heavy hand of magic. Despite everything, Elara felt the lingering pull of her resolve, and the more she embraced it, the weaker Morwen's power became. The curse that had once been so overwhelming, so absolute, was now faltering. Morwen, sensing her power slipping away, grew increasingly frantic. Her once perfect magic, capable of bringing entire villages to their knees, was faltering against the ritual Elara had begun. It made no sense to the witch. How could a mere mortal girl resist her? How could she defy a curse so ancient, so intricate, that it had devoured countless souls before her? The witch had cast hundreds of curses, watched thousands of lives be consumed, and yet this one, this simple girl, was different. Elara's defiance was like a splinter in the side of Morwen's power, something that refused to be eradicated, no matter how hard the witch tried to strike it down. Elara's pain, though unbearable, was beginning to work in her favor. The ashes had burned through her, weakening her body, but also cleansing her in a way that no magic could touch. The witch's tether to her soul was beginning to loosen, and for the first time since the curse began, Elara felt a flicker of hope. She could feel the pull of freedom, growing stronger as the magic around her weakened. But Morwen wasn't one to give up so easily. The witch, enraged by her inability to break Elara, began to lash out in ways Elara had never seen before. Nightmares came alive. Storm clouds rained down endless torrents of cold, and shadows crept into her dreams, whispering promises of eternal darkness. But none of it touched her. Her spirit, though battered, held firm. With each storm the witch sent, Elara's will only grew stronger. She had tasted the ashes, embraced the ritual, and had come so close to giving in. But something inside her refused to break. It wasn't just survival that drove her now. It was the very essence of who she was. She had lived her life with love, laughter, and kindness, and those things, those simple human things, were more powerful than anything Morwen could throw at her. With each day, Elara felt the pull of freedom growing stronger, the witch's magic weakening like a rope slowly unraveling. She could feel it deep within her. The curse was fading, and with it Morwen's power. The moment of freedom was near. Yet Elara knew the hardest part was still ahead of her. She could feel the witch's presence, still hovering just beyond the edge of her consciousness. Waiting, watching. Morwen was waiting for her to give up, for her to falter, to surrender. But Elara would not give in. She had tasted the ashes, felt the cost of the ritual, and now she would see it through. There would be no turning back. The curse had almost unraveled, and though Elara's body was frail, though her strength had waned, her resolve was unshakable. She was not the same girl who had once danced through her garden, her heart full of light. She was something new now, a woman forged in the fires of defiance, tempered by sacrifice, and more powerful than any curse could ever be. The final battle between her and Morwen was drawing near. One last push, one final act of resistance, and the witch's hold would be broken forever. Elara closed her eyes, steadying her breath. The energy she had felt earlier surged through her again, stronger this time, and she knew this was it. The ashes had worked, the spell was breaking, and she was about to be free. When Elara awoke, it was as if the entire world had shifted around her. The darkness that had clung to her life for so long was gone, replaced by a quiet peace she had almost forgotten existed. The air felt fresher, the sun brighter, and the birds that once seemed so distant now sang a song of freedom. Her body, still weak and frail from the sacrifices she had made, was beginning to regain some of its strength, but there was no denying that she had changed. Elara had endured so much, and in doing so she had become someone new, a survivor, a woman who had faced the depths of darkness and emerged victorious. The village, though once full of fear, now gathered around her, their faces filled with awe and respect. They had witnessed her battle with the witch, and they had seen the strength she had summoned in the face of impossible odds. They had seen her refuse to be consumed, to let the curse take her soul. In their eyes, Elara was no longer just the girl they had known. She was a legend. Her story would be passed down for generations, a tale of resilience, defiance, and the power of the human spirit to survive, even in the face of the darkest forces. But though the village rejoiced in her survival, Elara knew that the scars of her ordeal would never fully fade. The ashes she had consumed had taken more from her than just her health. They had taken her innocence, her purity, and left behind a deep understanding of the darkness that lurked in the world. Yet in the midst of it all, Elara had found something even more powerful, a deep, unshakable strength that would carry her through anything that came her way. The witch had been defeated, but the memory of what she had endured would never leave her. It was a part of her now, a reminder of what she had overcome. And though the scars would remain, they would serve as a testament to her resilience, to the strength that can only be found when one fights for their very soul. Elara had won her freedom, and with it, she had gained a new understanding of the power of sacrifice. The ashes had burned her, but they had also set her free. She would never forget the price of that freedom, but she would also never forget the lesson she had learned. No matter how dark the forces against us, we can always rise. We can always fight, and we can always find a way to reclaim our lives.